Hey everybody, it's Thursday night. I don't even know what today is. It's April 20th, and so tonight I'm going to talk about this Dominion voting machines case versus Fox News, and the settlement and what it all means, and some insight as it relates to, Trump derangement syndrome. And I'm going to give you a different perspective on Trump derangement syndrome than what you're used to hearing. But it's, I would be remiss not to mention the breaking news today where this whistleblower from the IRS is coming forward, and it's not clear, what he's going to allege and uncover because of the laws regarding the IRS and tax and so forth. Although there is reporting, as I'm sure you've all heard, that the reporting that this all relates to the Hunter Biden investigation and potential cover-up by the Justice Department, and potential misrepresentations, lying to Congress by a political appointee, which the reporting suggests that it's Merrick Garland. So, but, it kind of fits into what I'm going to talk about tonight, and I'll explain how I think it fits in. But it, first to the settlement. Fox News, as you may or may not heard, because, I know that Fox News isn't talking about it much, although they did mention it. Of course, the other news networks are talking about it, but Fox News settled its defamation lawsuit with Dominion voting machines for almost $800 million. $800 million. That's a big, big, big number. And let me just say first, a defamation lawsuit against a news organization, journalist, is extremely difficult to win. And the reason it is, there's a case called, I think, New York Times v. Sullivan. And the idea is you want journalism, you want freedom of the press, and you want freedom of speech. And so the Supreme Court came up with this very, very high standard that a plaintiff, in this case Dominion, must show that Fox News acted with malice, with a reckless disregard for the truth. And they would have to show that with clear and convincing evidence. Very difficult standard. It's not preponderance of the evidence, clear and convincing evidence. So these things are very seldom won. So the fact that Fox News settled it is a big deal, and the fact that they settled it for close to $800 million is incredible. So why did they settle it? I think there's actually a few reasons. One is there's no evidence that, hey Brian, listen, there was no evidence that these Dominion machines were in any way hacked for the presidential election. I mean, if there was any evidence of that, no matter how thin, Fox could have presented that, and it would have wiped out this lawsuit. And there was just no evidence of it. And I think it's important that people understand that is, at some point, this stuff that flies around that the machines were hacked. There's just no evidence of it. And I just read this today, that Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, he had a symposium, and at the symposium, he said he had all this data from the 2020 election, and he issued a challenge. He said, if anyone can demonstrate that this data is not from the 2020 election and has not been tampered with, I'll give you $5 million. So, some cyber guy takes on the challenge, demonstrates that what Mike Lindell is saying about that data is just nonsense. Lindell says, I disagree. They go to arbitration, and a panel of arbitrators decided that Lindell's got to pay the guy $5 million because that what Lindell is saying, what My Pillow guy is saying about the data from these machines that they were hacked is just wrong. And now Lindell's saying he's going to appeal the arbitrator's ruling, which is hard to do, and I don't want to get into that. But the point is, this idea that these machines were hacked and that Fox News was, repeating that and having Giuliani on there and that other lawyer, I can't remember her name, and others, and they kept perpetuating this as truthful. Fox News, had no evidence that it was truthful. And, at some point, we as conservatives have to recognize that all this stuff about the 2020 election, we got to get off of. And I'm going to talk more about that. Now, in all fairness, there were some in discovery, when you have a lawsuit, it's called discovery, and people have to give up evidence, text messages, emails, reports, documents, photographs, whatever. And in this litigation, there were some text messages produced that involved Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, the big stars at Fox News. And they undoubtedly would have been put on the witness stand in this litigation, and it would have been horribly embarrassing for them. So it's entirely possible here that part of this decision that Fox News made to settle this, part of the decision was that, if there are stars that have huge ratings were embarrassed in this lawsuit, that they could lose those ratings and those programs could go in the tank, and that would cause a loss of a tremendous amount of revenue for Fox News. And I suspect that's played into the decision. Now, the other interesting thing, what was I going to say? About all this is that the text messages, some of the text messages that were leaked, that were produced in this litigation, it said a few things, and I won't read them, but that Fox News wanted to keep their ratings up, and they know that Trump is big ratings, and that this whole thing with the election was stolen creates big ratings, and that was important to Fox News, which would give them motivation to stay on this Dominion voting machine thing, though there was no evidence supporting it. And then also some of the text messages, one in particular that Tucker Carlson sent, where he said how he hated passionately Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump was destroying the Republican Party. And, so there was a lot of embarrassing evidence that would have been presented in this trial that I am certain Fox News wanted to avoid. Now, here's an interesting aside. And listen, I like Tucker Carlson. I think he provides some interesting perspective on many issues. I'm kind of tired of Hannity, and I'm kind of tired of Ingram, but I like Tucker Carlson. The interesting thing is, if you watched Tucker Carlson's interview of Trump about a week ago or so, and it was, I think, Fox News trying to rehabilitate the relationship with Trump, in particular Tucker Carlson, and that's good for Donald Trump to be on Fox News, given this election. And something happened during that interview that I have to mention, and it's going to fit into this theme where I end up is, we as consumers of this information, we need to start using some common sense, and unless and until we start challenging and what politicians tell us and what these news outlets are saying, and challenging the news outlets by turning it off, we're going to continue to be fed this propaganda, both from the left and from the right. And that's what I'm saying here. It's coming from all sides. But at any rate, so during that interview with Trump, Trump started talking about how his tax returns were released, and that people are telling him, and that's how Trump gets his validation, is people were telling him. And let me just stop, and I hope I don't lose this idea of validation. Politicians do it all the time, and for example, as we see in the Hunter Biden thing, when that laptop first came out, we're now finding out that Anthony Blinken went to all these Intel people that were former Intel people, and that infamous letter of 51 Intel people said that the laptop looked like Russian disinformation. That's the validation, and it was all a lie. It was all misrepresentation. But that's what Biden used in the debate, as validation that the laptop wasn't real. That was a side. Trump, used this as his own validation, and what he said in the interview was how people who saw his tax returns were commenting to him about what a clean company he runs, and how good it was, and I'm sitting there waiting for Tucker Carlson to say, well, Mr. President, wait a minute. It was less than 6 months ago that your company, Trump Organization, was convicted of 17 felonies for how it handled its taxes and how it tried to avoid taxes, and had to pay a $1.6 million fine for the conviction of those 17 felonies. And Tucker Carlson didn't bring it up at all. Did not bring it up at all. And I say that from the perspective of, we conservatives must start challenging these narratives that we're hearing, and of course challenge the narratives from the left, but we need to start challenging them, from the politicians on the right, including Donald J. Trump. I mean, this whole thing cost Fox News $800 million. This whole thing with the election was stolen and all that. And mind you, and I saw a thing with Rudy Giuliani from, just about 10, 15 days ago, where he's saying, yeah, we have the evidence, but no judges will want to hear it. Well, that's not true. Of the 60-some cases that were filed, some of those judges heard some of that evidence and just rejected it as not convincing. Now you can, go down the rabbit hole and say the judge is corrupt. Be a critical thinker as it relates to that too. But this whole thing that the election was stolen, it just ends up that everybody's in on this massive conspiracy to steal the election, and at some point, it's no one's producing evidence. And I would say to Rudy Giuliani, if you have evidence, disclose it, put it out there for people to see. And the same thing with Donald Trump. I mean, you purport to have all this evidence, put it out there for people to see. And they've not done that. Now, there was that movie by Dinesh D'Souza that some people felt like it was very compelling. Other people did not. I mean, one of the things that I think is good that's happening is Republicans are now talking about, hey, we have to approach these elections like Democrats do, and get people to vote by mail, and make sure they vote, and make sure those ballots get sent in. And I was talking about this 2 years ago. Those who've come to some of my events have heard me talk about it. In fact, we did in some of the special elections, the New Hampshire Advantage PAC, we went around and educated voters about voting absentee and why that was important to do. So yeah, I mean, we Republicans need to start doing that stuff and be aggressive during elections. I'm not saying break the law, but you can be aggressive, and that's what we need to start doing to win. But we must stop. I mean, and I just got to tell you, this stuff with the election was stolen. And then January 6th, and I'll do a different show on January 6th because there's a lot of intricacy there. But it is destructive to the conservative movement. And and listen, we know what Trump derangement syndrome is from the left. No matter what Donald Trump does, the left just blows up, and they hate him. But I call it universal Trump derangement syndrome. And there's far too many people on the right, far too many conservatives on the right that do not, that give Donald Trump a pass on everything. And so just as the left criticizes him for things they shouldn't criticize him about, although there's a lot to criticize him for, people on the right, just let him get away with so many things, not the least of which this whole thing that the election was stolen. The election was not stolen. Wasn't stolen. And I think, you know, the Trump supporters out there, you need to start preparing yourself. We had this indictment out of Manhattan, this DA Alvin Bragg, and admittedly, I believe that was a very, very weak indictment. Very, very weak. Although there's some nuances that I don't think the media talks about, and you know, and the fact that Cohen made the payment with his own money 11 days before the election, and then the following year, Trump reimbursed him in 12 payments and grossed up those reimbursements because they called them legal fees when instead of a reimbursement. And since he was calling them legal fees, Cohen would have to pay tax on it. If it was purely a reimbursement for an expense, Cohen wouldn't have to pay tax on it. So Trump paid 2x, 2 times as much to cover Cohen's tax liability. And that's where this sort of falsifying corporate records thing comes from. And then they're trying to shoehorn that into this campaign violation with Cohen before the election, paying that money. And Cohen will testify that payment, based on his discussions with Donald Trump, was made at Donald Trump's direction because it was 11 days before the election and he didn't want to come out before the election. That's what Cohen's going to testify to. All right, and so you can't have someone make a campaign contribution right before the election and then pay him back later and say it's not a campaign contribution. But there's going to be more coming down. I think more indictments coming down against Trump. I mean, all these investigations are ongoing. So be ready. And I mean, you know, don't have Trump derangement syndrome on the right. I think Donald Trump's policies, most of his policies, I really, really like. But you know, Donald Trump as a leader is not good. He's divisive. His personality is divisive, and the name calling and everything. And I mean, I just don't like. One of the things I find interesting is he talks about how terrible people are that used to work for him. John Bolton and Nick Mulvaney now, and Kelly, who was the General Kelly, and General Mattis. And he's, they're stupid. He says, he's the one that hired them. What's it say about Donald Trump's judgment? But at any rate, just be prepared and look at this stuff objectively. And you know, the Georgia investigation, the investigation into January 6th, and I'm going to do a show on that. The special counsel now is also investigating this fundraising, and I think what the special counsel is looking into is, did Donald Trump know after the election that he really did lose, and there's evidence that he said that to people, I lost. But that, he was misrepresenting to people, to donors, to get them to donate. And they're looking at a wire fraud angle on that, and then the document situation. And listen, it's, raiding Mar-a-Lago was awful. It was awful. And I think is the federal government targeting Trump? Yeah, to some degree. But you know what? If Donald Trump is his own worst enemy, I mean, he's got to be squeaky clean. And I think we're going to find out in this document thing he wasn't so squeaky clean. And just, you know, the Trump derangement syndrome on the right, I call it the universal Trump derangement syndrome. You know, don't get sucked into that. I think you know, this whole thing with Trump is going to turn very bad, you know, in the coming months and within the next year. So just don't think everything that's going on with him is because, you know, the deep state hates him so badly. I mean, you know, Trump, quite frankly, has done some really stupid things, and you know, in that respect, he's his own worst enemy, and something you may or may not heard about. There's actually a case that's starting Monday that this woman who claims that Trump raped her 30 years ago and has defamed her for calling her names when she came out with it, that trial starts Monday. It's a civil trial. It's not a criminal trial. It's a civil trial. She's seeking damages. And I don't think he'd be prosecuted criminally for that because statute of limitations. But that trial starts Monday. There's litigation going on. Or will be going on unless he settles it. The other thing that happened is in this civil litigation by the New York Attorney General against Trump Organization and the Trump Organization telling banks that properties are worth a big number so they could borrow more, but then telling taxing authorities that the property is worth much less so they don't pay so much taxing in taxes. Well, that case is going on, and Donald Trump had his deposition taken, I think it was Monday, and so that case has started. He had his deposition taken Monday, and this is the case where when they were investigating and they asked him to come in for an examination, he took the Fifth Amendment like 100 times. But in the deposition Monday, he answered questions for 7 hours, and that deposition, as sure as I'm sitting here, someone's going to leak it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of embarrassing stuff in there on Donald Trump. But listen, folks, it's you know, things are not going to be good for Donald Trump, and just don't get sucked into this because you know, we need to win this election, we conservatives, and you know, I just think there's no way that Trump would win a general election against whoever runs, and I'm not sure that Biden is going to run anyway. And I think maybe this thing with this whistleblower might have been engineered to get Biden not to run. So a lot going on politically. Don't fall into the Trump derangement syndrome on the right. You know, some of this stuff is brought on by Trump's own behavior, so don't set yourself up to be really disappointed. Look at it critically. Well, listen, thank you so much. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like me to cover in any of these, just shoot me a message, a DM, or send me an email. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you. Bye-bye.